If you've joined the meeting, could you please turn off your microphones just so that we don't get any interruptions? Good evening, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar on exploring apprenticeships in prosthetics and orthotics. This is one of the NHSC workforce reform project webinars that we've been having. If you've attended a couple of them previously, this is going to be another one like them. And we have Marion today with us, who has worked with the team to develop a number of resources and assets regarding careers and career guidance and apprenticeships as well. So on today's talk, I would invite you to listen in, have your questions ready. It will be a very interactive session as well, so feel free to raise your hand and open up your mic. I think you'll be able to do that and ask your questions. The chat box and the Q&A section are also available. If you want to use that, please do as well. This session is being recorded and will be made live and public to everyone through YouTube and on the BAPO website as well. Right, with that being said, I will hand over to Marion.
Thank you, Krista. And good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. The intention is to look at apprenticeships in prosthetics and orthotics, what the benefits are and how they're funded. And we thought this was a really good topic to introduce in National Careers Week as well this week. So hopefully it inspires some people. As Krista said, it's very interactive. So if you've got any points you want to raise, any questions, please pop them in the chat and we'll deal with them at the end of the session. So what I wanted to do was start off by reminding ourselves about some of the issues facing prosthetics and orthotics at the moment. So prosthetists and orthotists, there are about just over 1,200 registered with the Health and Care Professions Council. That was in October last year. It's the smallest group of allied health professions, and it has the lowest retention and highest attrition rates of all of the allied health professions as well. A report in 2023 commissioned by BAPO shows that 1 in 8 prosthetists or orthotists leave the register within 4 years of joining it. And this is despite there being a growing demand for prosthetic and orthotic services in the UK. The World Health Organization shows that our numbers are low compared to the population, and it does mean that we need to get more and more prosthetists and orthotists into the profession over the next few years. The NHS England long-term workforce plan aim is for 22% of clinical training to be via apprenticeships by 2031-32. As of 22-23, only 7% of clinical training was via apprenticeships. So you can see that the whole background to having apprenticeships is something that we really need to focus on, and it is a way of opening up the profession to different groups. So what we're going to do tonight is have a look at that, see what some of the benefits are for people, and as I say, deal with any issues. So the approach that I've taken as part of the project that NHS England commissioned with BAPO to look at the long-term workforce, I've looked specifically at the level 6 programme, but I am going to talk tonight about the level 3 programme as well. To do this and to get the background, I've spoken with a range of stakeholders. So I've spoken to a number of current apprentices, I've spoken to employers, I've spoken to educators and to the higher education institutes as well. And I would just like to say that at the beginning of the project, I had assistance from Dawn Crofts from Wolverhampton Prosthetic Service and Jay Pereira from Kettering and Northampton Orthotic Service, both of whom were really, really helpful and invaluable in moving this forward. So just to remind ourselves what prosthetic and orthotic apprenticeships are available at the moment. So there's a level 3 technician apprenticeship, which is available via the University of Derby. And there's also one other provider called Springfield Training. And then there's a level 6 apprenticeship, which is available via the University of Derby. And we know that there'll always be those who want to follow the traditional degree route, by which we mean going to university. And at the moment, that's Salford and Strathclyde. But since 2022, these apprenticeships have been available. And this is an alternative route for those people who don't want to go to university for the level 6 programme, or who can't because of financial or family commitments, or who perhaps just don't want traditional academic learning. And then for the technicians at the level 3 apprenticeship, there really wasn't a well publicised qualification. And often the only apprenticeship was an engineering one. And I know from past experience where we've had technicians, when I worked for Blatchford, and we've had technicians do engineering, they've perhaps moved out of the industry then and gone into a more traditional engineering background. So let's just have a look at what these entail. So the level 3 at Derby takes about 18 months to complete. It consists of on-the-job learning and the uploading of evidence to an e-portfolio. An academic study is about 20% of the programme, delivered via face-to-face or online teaching, as well as the work that people do individually. Face-to-face is often in blocks at Derby, and online includes group webinars and independent work. And we know that it's proving very, very popular with technicians. If we look at the one from Springfield Training, that's delivered more in the way of a traditional NVQ. So it takes 12 to 18 months to complete, consists of on-the-job learning. I've just seen I've got a spelling mistake in there, so apologies for that, everybody. But it consists of on-the-job learning and the uploading of evidence to an e-portfolio, with academic study as 20% of the programme delivered via online teaching and regular assessment on site at workplace. So there's no need for people to leave their workplace. The level 6 programme is a 3-year programme, and on successful completion, candidates will be eligible for HCPC registration. And again, it's delivered in much the same way as the technician programme. So on-the-job learning, uploading of evidence to the e-portfolio, with academic study delivered via face-to-face or online teaching, and the face-to-face teaching is generally in blocks at Derby. Online, group webinars, lectures, independent work, lots and lots of cooperation between all the students on both programmes. What we're going to do is look at what an apprenticeship is. What is it? And what I wanted to say is an apprentice is an employee. So they're not just with you for the length of the placement. This is for employers who are used normally to having students come from Salford and Strathclyde for a short period of time, whereas an apprentice is somebody who is with them for the whole length of the apprenticeship, and hopefully a lot longer, and it's a permanent job. So an apprenticeship is a paid job where the employee learns and gets valuable experience. You have on-the-job training, and then at least 20% of your working hours off the job spent completing classroom-based learning or other things. So as an apprentice, you've got paid employment with all the benefits that brings you. It gives you hands-on experience in the sector that you're interested in. And as we said, at least 20% off the job training. But I am going to talk a little bit more about what off the job training entails. And it gives you formal assessment at the end of it, which leads to a nationally recognised qualification. And that's any apprenticeship. We're not just talking about prosthetics and orthotics. So just as we said, it's a great paid work opportunity for anybody over the age of 16. You could be early in your career. You're looking to upskill in your current job, looking for a career change, or somebody who's not in full-time education. And as we said, they're not just for new recruits. They are actually a great opportunity for anybody at whatever stage in their career. The technician programme has got people who are new recruits. And what's proved to be a really, really good draw for recruitment is the chance to get a recognised qualification in the specific sector. It's also got people who are already technicians who thought, actually, I've been doing this job, I'm good at it, I'd like to be recognised by a formal qualification. The degree programme has got a real wide range of people. It's got people who've come straight from college at 18. It's got university leavers in other subjects, as well as those looking to change their career from inside and outside the healthcare sector. And I know Jane's on the call, Jane Ansell from Derby's on the call tonight, and she'll correct me, but I believe that the age range in the current cohort is from 18 to 51. So what we're seeing is that actually the chance to do an apprenticeship is bringing all sorts of people into the sector. What I said previously was that as an apprentice, you have 20% of your working time involved in off-the-job training. And what does this mean? Does it mean that an apprentice is closeted away doing their portfolio? Or does it mean that actually they're involved in a whole range of activities that lead to improving their learning? So it could mean that they're shadowing other clinicians or technicians, that they're being mentored by somebody who's got much more experience than them. They're in coaching sessions, one-to-one meetings with their educator. They're on industry or manufacturing visits. They're doing independent research, attendance at conferences, team training sessions where the rest of the team are actually learning about the same things as you, on workshops internally and externally. And a whole range of other things. So that 20% of your time doesn't mean that you're just locked away completing your portfolio. And I think it's important to say that whether you're at level 3, level 6, or whatever level, chances are that 20% of your time isn't going to be enough to get all the work done for you to successfully complete the programme. So as an apprentice and as the employer, people need to be aware of that. There may be some extra time required. What we've seen and what we've seen nationally as a whole, across a whole range of apprenticeships, is that there are an awful lot of benefits to both the employer and to the employee who is an apprentice. As an employer, it does improve retention. And again, that's something that's a massive issue in prosthetics and orthotics at the moment. So it gives them the chance to retain and retrain employees. One of the big advantages is that we're training and employing people locally. So if we look at places like the South East, London, the South West, normally when we have students from Salford and Strathclyde, they will move down to the South East, move into London for a short while, and then move back, often back to Scotland. What we're seeing is that people are being employed locally, and we're hoping that this will lead to a better retention rate. It's attracting a much wider pool of recruits as well. As we said, we've got, certainly on the level 6 programme, we've got people aged from 18 through to 51, from a whole wide range of backgrounds, from people who were estate agents previously, musicians, as well as students coming through straight from school. It supports mobility and progression, offering progression opportunities for those people who are already employed. And it encourages diversity, as we said. We're bringing people in from all sorts of backgrounds. It allows employers to reshape their workforce by looking at the diversity and looking at the wider pool of recruits. And it also helps to develop some clear career pathways. And because everybody's involved in educating and developing those learners, it's cultivating a learning organisation across the piece. As an apprentice, you're earning while you're learning. So you're not at college just learning something and having to either pay for it, you're actually earning money. You've got access to all the employee benefits of the employer. And certainly if you're doing the degree course at level 6, you've got no tuition fees or student loans to pay back at the end of it. And because you're working inside an existing organisation, an existing service, you've got access to expert support and mentoring. And at the end of it, you've got a nationally recognised qualification in a sector which is actually has growing demand for employees. What I did want to say, if we've got any educators and any employers on the call, is there are some differences in placements against having an apprentice. Normally, when educators take on a placement student, those students have been at Salford or Strathclyde for quite a while, and they do have some underpinning knowledge. What we're seeing is that sometimes there is that lack of underpinning knowledge, which means that educators, supervisors are having to put in an awful lot more time to bring those people up to scratch, up to the level of knowledge that they would expect. This isn't any different to any other apprenticeship, but I think what people haven't been prepared for is that there is this difference. We're working with, I know the university are working with people to prepare educators better, and it was new in 2022. So everybody's starting to see that time is required, but it can be difficult to give that time in smaller services. Issues with placements, and this is across the level 3 and across the level 6 programme. It can be difficult if you work, say, in a purely orthotic service to find prosthetic placements. We've always had issues with this across the sector, and there is a need for greater collaboration and greater investment in this. And I know that Derby University and the University Alliance have issued a recent report saying the same thing. There can be some difficulty because you've got an apprentice on site all the time. They're seeing lots and lots of experiences, getting experience by looking at patients, and it can be difficult to link that into learning. But again, that's something that educators are having to get used to. And then what can be difficult, particularly for those people coming straight from college or school, or where they've not got a lot of life experience, previous interaction with patients and service users can be something that takes a little bit of time to get used to. But again, these are things that we're all having to develop and having to work through as the programs progress. So just a quick run through how apprenticeships are funded. So they're funded via the apprenticeship levy. So any employer who's got a wage bill of more than £3 million a year pays the levy of 0.5% of their total wage bill. So that usually means that for those employees, they will have funds in their account which can pay for the vast majority of the apprenticeships. For those employers who have a wage bill of less than £3 million a year, they can hopefully get a transfer from another organisation. So what we've seen in a couple of organisations is the NHS, where a private provider is providing the service. The NHS have paid have given them some of their levy funds to pay for apprenticeships. And then non-levy payers can either secure a transfer, or they can pay 5% of the cost and the government will pay the remaining 95%. Depending on the age of employees as well and apprentices, there is further support available for younger employees or those coming straight out of care. And if anybody wants more details about that, just pop it in the chat and I'll provide that later. Just a quick note to say that levy funds, if for any levy payer, their funds expire 24 months after they go into the fund, unless they've spent them on apprenticeship training. And spending it means that the funds have actually been paid over to a training provider. If they haven't, that money is lost and it goes into a general fund for education. The levy can be used to pay for a whole host of things, so endpoint assessment, off-the-job training, the tripartite progress reviews, and any additional learning required to retake the endpoint assessment. It can also pay for additional learning if anybody needs to resit an exam linked to a mandatory qualification, accommodation for residential training, and it can pay for registration exams and certification costs, but it can't be used to pay for any license to practice, so HCPC registration, etc. What the levy can't fund is salaries, PPE and safety equipment, uniforms, travel costs, student membership fees, mentoring costs, repeating qualifications for anybody who needs to do it, accommodation costs other than for residential training, and if anybody needs to do English and maths to level 2 to get onto an apprenticeship, the levy can't fund that, but there is additional funding available. And again, if anybody needs to ask about that, we can give details later. The apprenticeship levy is changing from April this year, and it's going to become the growth and skills levy. As you'd expect, there's a new government come in last July, and they want to make changes and do things slightly differently. So there will be the chance to use it for broader training options. So employers will be able to use it for shorter courses, upskilling initiatives, and not just apprenticeships. Allegedly, there'll be a simplified process for smaller businesses. So anybody who needs to use the co-investment model, red tape will be reduced and it'll be easier to access and use funding. And the idea is that it'll be able to help employers invest in training where there are local skills gaps. Hopefully building a stronger regional economy and a more resilient workforce. And it will focus on growth sectors. So there'll be specific incentives to help training in high demand and growth industries. Now, high demand is prosthetics and orthotics at the moment. Whether there'll be any specific help for that, we don't know, but there's more details to come out and we'll just have to wait and see. But these are the things that are definite at the moment. One of the things that I think is a big issue in prosthetics and orthotics and in apprenticeships is awareness of the sector and awareness of the fantastic opportunities available in the sector. I was just chatting to Krista before we started the call, and I'm actually an enterprise advisor for a school in the South Yorkshire area, and I work across South Yorkshire. And it's really, really interesting when we talk to students there about their desire to work in healthcare, but their lack of knowledge about the different types of roles available in healthcare, and prosthetics and orthotics is a really, really difficult one to get across. During the course of this project, BAPO has worked with some organisations such as Life After Professional Sport, the Armed Forces. We've done some work with some schools, but we do need to do more. again, as part of the project, we've developed some fantastic resources which we can put into schools and share with careers leaders, but they're available via BAPO. So if people don't know about prosthetics and orthotics, they're not going to know about BAPO. So what I think is a great call tonight is for people to actually spread the word and get involved in sharing this. To sum up, I think what we need to say, we've talked about what benefits apprenticeships provide. We've talked about what types of apprenticeships are available in prosthetics and orthotics. And we've talked about the funding for them. What I think we need to say is they provide some great apprenticeships, provide some great opportunities for development for existing employees. It broadens the range of candidates. It allows employees to become embedded into organisations from day one. So they get to know how services operate, how companies operate, and they become part of that from an early stage. What we need to do is ensure that services and contracts, so be they NHS services, be they private contracts, allow for apprentices. We have to be realistic and say that often it takes a long time for those people to become effective members of the team, and they do take time from other employees to train and develop them. But it is important that we allow those apprentices into these services and that we use this as a real way of broadening the range of candidates and growing the workforce. What I would ask, if anybody is on the call who is actually employed in the sector at the moment, is let's take every opportunity to share information about the careers available. So if you see any information about careers fairs, you get the chance to go into schools and talk about it, please share the message that prosthetics and orthotics is a great sector to be involved in. There's a growing demand for it, and as an apprentice, it's a really, really good way to develop your skills, be it as a technician or a clinician. And I know, I think Ian Adams on as well from Derby, and I think he'll correct me, but I think some of the technicians are actually looking to move on to the level 6 programme as well. So again, it's a great opportunity for development. So that's me done. I hope everybody has taken something from that, but we'll deal with any questions and anything we've got in the chat now, Krista.
Thank you so much, Marion. That was wonderful and very detailed as well. I have a question in the chat, but I will implore everybody else to turn on your mics and just raise your hand if you have a question. I know the people who are employers as well who are on the call. This is a wonderful opportunity to ask all of the pressing questions, share experiences that could potentially help others have better understanding of the benefits of apprenticeships. So the question here is, are international professionals who have recently moved to the UK eligible for apprenticeships?
That's a really good question. And I am struggling just to remember what the actual time scale is. I know Jane's on. Jane or Ian, do you know the time scale for qualification for this?
If they've been resident in the UK, I think it's for 12 months plus, and they still need to be in full-time employment within a P&O sector and have the support of their employer. So as long as they've got either UK residency or a visa to study here, then there's no reason. Obviously, they need to live and work within the UK. Well, actually within England. To be on the apprenticeship programme. We have a non-apprenticeship route, which is exactly the same programme, but funded differently for Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland candidates as well. But But yeah, does that answer the question that was asked?
Yes, I think so.
Does,
But Jane,
yeah, thank
just
you.
to clarify from my own understanding, so say someone came in for a different degree and was on a degree sponsorship, would they be eligible then under a different employer to get into apprenticeships, or do they have to have a work visa?
I'm not 100% on that, Krista, to be
Right.
honest. I would assume that would have to be a combination of a work visa and, and an education visa, because it's a combination of both.
Right.
Yeah.
So that means, for example, Derby itself doesn't sponsor students to come study then?
No.
No, because
No.
we can't.
No.
You can't have an apprenticeship without having an
A job.
employer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to provide that 80% of on-the-job training, and obviously the employment element of the entry requirements.
Yeah.
Ian's going to add to.
Ian?
Yeah, I was going to essentially say just what Jane said, that you need to have a visa to be an employment visa for the UK, because you have to be employed. That's basically I think that's a slight difference from a normal student, because you have to be employed, and as Jane said, you need the backing of your employer. So obviously before a student was put forward, they would obviously have that right to work in the UK, therefore they would be in employment.
Right. So Hasaf has just popped in kind of a situation of, he says he has a skilled worker dependent visa and is allowed to work 40 hours a week. So I think from my understanding, if you already have the ability to work, then you can get into employment with either orthotics, prosthetics, and then be able to go through your employer to go through the apprenticeship, if I'm correct.
That would be my understanding as well.
Right, right, okay.
My understanding.
Okay, the chat seems to be lighting up. We have someone else typing.
No?
Nope.
All right, she just raised her hand. Right, you can unmute yourself and go ahead and speak.
Hi, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my name is Semana. I'm doing a PhD in the University of Leicester. Yeah, actually, I want to ask about to get the certification of BAPO. It's not related to the apprenticeship. I have a master's in P&O and a background in P&O, but I'm doing something else in the PhD. But then I need to join this BAPO profession. I don't know which route can I take to get that certification, to be registered as a P&O here.
You would need to contact the Health and Care Professions Council. Joining BAPO doesn't give you the license to practice, Samana. You would need to get your registration with the Health and Care Professions Council. And if you look onto their website, it does talk you through how to get it for an international student.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Just to add there, if you need more information about how to get into P&O careers, I think we have a dedicated page for that Marion has also helped to put together. And there's a section for internationals as well, to help everyone navigate that. Because I know that it can be confusing, as someone who has gone through the international routes herself.
It's not straightforward, is it, Krista?
No, it isn't.
No.
So yeah, I completely understand the confusion as well. Great. So I don't see any more questions. I'm just going to ask a cheeky question to Ian and Jane. How has the experience been with the apprentice that you've had over the last, I think, 3 years now?
I'll let Jane go first, and then I'll chip in.
Well, it's in its infancy. We started in 2022. And And the course has just grown and grown. It has been a lot of fun. It's been a steep learning curve for everyone involved, not just our students. For us at the university, for Ian, myself, delivering the course and you know, building it as we go, for our students, but also for our practice educators and the industry as a whole. Marion touched on this. It is a brand new way of training people within our industry, and I think that's taken, you know, some time for everybody to get used to. And every time a new employer takes on a new apprentice, if they haven't had one before, it's their turn to kind of get used to it, and we support them as much as we can. But we're also, through BAPO as well, forming better networks across the whole industry. Although there's lots of different companies, they are coming together around education now and saying, you know, let's support each other. If we're finding a good way to do something, we'll share that with whoever you are, whatever company you're at. So it's really finding its feet now. It's nicely getting embedded into the workforce planning of most companies now, and we've got not just the really big companies, of which there are a few, but we're getting the nice kind of middly size and smaller companies now coming through that benefit from applying for the levy funding and being able to take apprentices on even if they don't pay into the apprentice levy. I think there was a bit of confusion around that in the industry at the start, and a lot of people thought, oh, we're too small to have apprentices. That's not the case. That's not how the levy works. The levy is there for everybody, and it evens that out. It gives those smaller companies equal opportunity to take and build their workforce. So that's been really fun. And yeah, it's just going from strength to strength. It's been an absolute pleasure. We're almost, our first cohort is almost there. They're in their final trimester. They will be finished the delivery in the end of May, and then they'll go through the endpoint assessment process. So hopefully by July this year, we'll have our first graduate prosthetist orthotist from the degree apprenticeship programme.
Woohoo!
And
Yeah,
I'm
exciting.
very excited as well.
I'm very
I've
excited.
spoken to a whole range of employers, apprentices and educators, and Jane knows that there's been some feedback that we've passed on about things that could be different, but overall the response has been really, really positive. The apprentices in particular have said it's a really good way of learning. They are committed to the industry, which is good news for us all. And they've come from such a range of backgrounds that it's really, really bringing different people into the sector. So I think, you know, from having spoken to people, I think it's a really, really good way of moving forward and getting a different way of people qualifying. Yeah. So
Yeah, and
well done, Jane. Well done, Ian. Yeah.
I'll give a little perspective on the level 3 candidates. So I'm now on my third cohort, and it's been interesting seeing we've had some individuals, age groups as well, Marion. I think from the level 3s we've had from 17-year-olds up to 32, 33, I think it's my oldest.
Yeah.
But what I've actually noticed is some of the students really grow in confidence. I mean, we've had some students who maybe school experience wasn't a great experience for them, but they seem to really love the apprenticeship idea. And I think some of the students, certainly cohort 2, had a couple of really, really good success stories. There are students who really came out of their shell and came on and are now a massive benefit to the employer and to the profession. And I think hopefully that continues. I mean, I do enjoy education, I must admit personally, and seeing people develop is fantastic. And ultimately, we need people to come and replace us at some point, because obviously we will eventually retire at some point, some earlier than others. I know, Marion, you've retired, but you're getting dragged back in again. But no, I think it's a good way of learning, and I think for certain students, it's a perfect way of learning.
Right, so we have Alex, whose hands is raised. Alex, you can unmute yourself and go ahead.
Hello. I was just wondering, touching on what Marion said before, we've got a couple of apprentices with us at the moment, and obviously the bit that resonated was the bit where you said, like, some people are coming in with quite a lot of experience and some people are coming in like straight from school. Do you have any advice for the ones who are coming straight from school as to how we can kind of help to give them a bit of a running start without overwhelming them with far too much information at the beginning, because I feel like that's where I'm struggling to find the balance at the moment.
Yeah, I find the ones you've got to remember when they're coming straight from school, it's the first time that they've joined the workforce. It could be their first proper job.
Yeah.
It's a very different way of learning. They're a lot more independent when they're in higher education, whichever form they take, but it is more self-driven. So there's that aspect as well. So the nice thing about the apprenticeship is it is the individual student's journey. Genuinely, all the material is there, but we take them at their own pace. So we do expect the school leavers, the A-level leavers, to be, you see a massive improvement over the first year, but maybe not so much in the first 6 months as those that have more life experience and maybe more a mature student. It just takes them that little bit longer to settle into it. And I tend to say to practice educators, focus on the soft skills first, focus on them being comfortable in a clinical environment, being able to talk to people, being able to just be present there, making sure that they have tasks to do that are useful to the clinical team, giving them, a level of responsibility that is suitable to their ability. And then the rest will follow. And it's not how they run the race. Everyone will reach the finish line after 3 years. Everyone will take a different path to get there.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so.
Thanks, Jane.
Is there any more?
Also to say to Alex, there's a phrase that we have within apprenticeships. It's called "grow your own," and it actually gives you the ability to grow your own employees the way you need them to grow. Effectively, they'll understand your software systems, the way the company works. So when they graduate, they're literally ready to run the clinics right away, effectively.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Ian. We have a question in the chat as well. And I think you guys have already gone over this, but someone has, I think, a HNC in P&O, which I think is like a diploma program, I'm not sure. And would like more information about how they can get into apprenticeships. Is there a website or somewhere we can direct people who need to go and just check out some of this information for themselves?
Yeah, they can visit the University of Derby website, and on the course finder, if you put in prosthetics and orthotics, it will bring up both our apprenticeship programs at both levels. And that will also on there is the entry requirements for both programs as well. So if you've got an HNC, it will count towards because we want 120 UCAS points or a level 3 qualification in health and social care subject, which quite possibly whoever's put the comment on, I can't see who's done it, but that may go some way towards their entry requirements. Ultimately, we can't take direct entry from any student. They have to be in employment within the UK, and they have to have that support of their employer to join the apprenticeship. So you need to kind of go out and find an apprenticeship in your area, which it's easier said than done. I completely understand that. I know BAPO are trying to work towards kind of coordinating some of that, but if at this time of year companies will start looking, our next candidate window opens at the end of April. So they'll be kind of, if they're going to advertise, they're going to be advertising now or within the next month. Look on NHS jobs, find out where your local prosthetics and orthotics service is provided. If you want to stay in the same location, go to the local general hospital, see if they've got an orthotics department, find out the company that is maybe contracted to run that or whether they're in the house, and approach them directly as well to say that you're interested and would they consider taking on apprenticeships. Those probably, because we are such a small industry, it's probably taking a more direct route. I would also kind of email your CV wildly across all the P&O companies that you can Google, and just kind of get it out there to HR departments so that they know that you're interested if an opportunity comes up. A lot of the companies will advertise on their vacancies area of their websites as well, any apprenticeship roles that are going.
And I think it's fair to say, just backing up what Jane said, that sometimes some of the private companies may not realise that actually they could take an apprentice, whereas if you approach them and send your CV in, it might just prompt them into thinking, actually, we could take that person as an apprentice. So the direct approach will definitely be a good one to use. Yeah.
Right, thank you. I've popped some links in the chat, so that would be useful for everyone. There's one on NHS jobs as well that I've popped on. There's a vacancy currently available, so you might want to check that out. I had a question for Marion. We have Derby and Springfield who do the level 3 technician, but I only get to hear about Derby. Is there a difference in terms of funding or something that makes Springfield less popular, would I say?
No, I wouldn't say it is. And certainly Springfield have been offering a qualification for a little bit longer than Derby has. So it is still an apprenticeship. You can still use your levy funds to fund it. It's just delivered differently, with on-site assessors coming in regularly.
Right.
It's just a different way of doing it. Derby obviously launched in 2022, and we do want that to be a success, because the more people they get on board, the more chance there is of it continuing to run, obviously. But I don't think we should ignore the fact that there is an alternative provider. So no real difference.
Right, brilliant. And I think that's about it. We have all the questions answered, and I don't see any more in the chat.
No.
Yeah. So if
Yeah,
there's
so I'd
no
like
other...
to say thank you very much, everybody, for joining us tonight, and I hope that's been useful. But if there is anything else, then please email into Bappo, and Krista can share them with me after that, can't we, Krista? Yeah.
Yes, yes. Right, brilliant. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful
Thanks,
evening.
everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.